Muy buenas tardes a todos nuevamente. Les damos la bienvenida a Innova Polinap con esta hermosa vista desde la Academia Politécnica Naval. Les recuerdo que todos estos encuentros virtuales son posibles gracias al patrocinio del Gobierno Regional de Valparaíso y el soporte de Corfo en su programa de apoyo al entorno para el emprendimiento y la innovación. En nuestro último encuentro, en el mes de diciembre, hablamos de cómo la Armada de Chile por primera vez entraba al ecosistema de innovación a través del desafío Avante, el cual ha sido todo un éxito. Fueron 39 equipos los postulantes de las mejores universidades del país e incluso algunas extranjeras y muchas startups interesadas en proponer soluciones. Estamos muy orgullosos y agradecidos de esos 164 integrantes que pusieron todo su conocimiento, pasión y esfuerzo para poder clasificar dentro de los 9 finalistas. Estamos seguros de que podremos volver a contar con su apoyo en la próxima edición del Desafío Avante 2021. Hoy quiero invitarlos a escuchar al profesor Robert Kaplan, honorable profesor emérito de la Escuela de Negocios de Harvard, exponente del desarrollo del liderazgo, co-desarrollador del sistema de costos basado en actividades y la famosa herramienta de planificación y dirección Balance Scorecard. Pasó 16 años en la Facultad de Negocios de la Universidad de Carnegie Mellon y luego se unió a la Escuela de Negocios de Harvard en el año 1984. Les recuerdo que simultánea abajo algo con forma de globo terráqueo, pueden hacer clic y elegir el idioma con el que van a escuchar esta conferencia. Así es que bienvenido, welcome professor. Now you are the start this afternoon to explain us your experience, how to develop innovation.
Okay.
Professor, you hear
Sure.
me?
So thank you very much. Pleased to have this opportunity to speak to you from the Northern Hemisphere, where we are beginning to enter our springtime. And I have been asked to just speak on a very specific topic, and I will just be focused on that topic. The topic is, how do we use the strategy map and balanced scorecard framework to focus an organization on a strategy of innovation. And that's with about 12 slides. I'll try to indicate the possibilities of that, and then we'll leave it and have it open for questions. So I have started to share my screen, and believe you should be able to see that now. And let me start with a general strategy map. And this is a basic template. And I use this to indicate that any organization needs to have an innovation strategy. And so innovation has always been a central part of the balanced scorecard since its introduction back in 30 years ago, 1990 to 1992. Because without innovation, an organization becomes commoditized, just does the same thing over and over again, and eventually could fail. So in our framework, where our ultimate objective, and even though I am being sponsored here by the Navy of Chile, will take a private sector perspective here, and ultimately trying to generate long-term shareholder value. And we do this through 2 levers. One is to be more productive, lower our cost to serve, improve our asset utilization. But where innovation comes through is giving us the opportunity for new revenue sources and revenue growth. And so that's featured in the financial perspective up here. When we get to the customer perspective, and I will spend much more time talking about this, here's where organizations differ on their strategy. So a organization like Toyota or Walmart competes on low prices, low cost for the customer. That's the primary component of its value proposition. Also quality, because quality is expensive for the customer to fix. Now, many organizations do partnerships and services, consulting companies and many retail companies. They're very much the strategy of service. But where the innovation comes in is the functionality. People who just want better performance. And I'll be more specific again about what that means. And so when we go to our internal or process perspective, we have a whole set of objectives relating to the innovation to deliver higher functionality. First, identifying opportunities for innovation, selecting which ones we'll pursue, then the product design and product development process, and then finally the launch and how quickly we can ramp up production. And as I said, this will go into almost every organization's strategy map because everybody has to have some innovation theme, even if they're also, of course, doing very well on operations, trying to be better, faster, cheaper, and the relationship strategy of working better with our customer. And especially more recently, we've been more conscious of that businesses have to be socially responsible, be concerned about the environment, safety and health of their employees, and be a good citizen in their community. And so we have that as another internal perspective. But again, staying within the critical innovation processes, then that requires certain capabilities of among our people. It has to drive down to the skills and capabilities of people who will be doing the innovation, the technology tools that they have available for the innovation, and the organizational culture that we need for innovation. And the organizational culture for innovation is quite different from an organizational culture of continuous improvement, as exemplified by Toyota with its Kaizen continuous improvement. There we're trying to look for defects and drive defects out, whereas the culture in an innovative organization is not continuous improvement, but out-of-the-box thinking. So this is an overview, again, of where innovation fits within any organization's strategy. But let's dive down into those organizations for whom innovation is central to its strategy. And we refer to that as the innovation or product leadership value proposition. And to succeed in this strategy, innovative companies have to continually develop products that offer superior performance for the customers. Products and services that go beyond our existing capabilities into new and desirable ways. And so what are examples of companies that exemplify innovation? Well, certainly the technology companies that have grown up really in the 30 years since we introduced the balanced scorecard. Apple and Amazon and Google. These are the most valuable companies in the U.S. stock market today, to show you the importance of technology and innovation. But in the automobile market, I mentioned Toyota as being very good at low cost, and the people we look to for innovation and performance are Mercedes and BMW and Porsche, in effect the German automobile companies, highly engineered, new features, new functionality, and the best performance. I say they're able to win the left-hand lane of the Autobahn. Toyotas don't drive in the left-hand lane of German highways because they'll always have a BMW or Mercedes on their rear bumper telling them, move over, you don't belong here. This is only for the high-performance vehicles. Now, more recently, in the last year, we have the examples of two pharmaceutical companies, Moderna, a relatively recent company, and Pfizer, taking a vaccine from a German company, who are able, in unprecedented time, to develop an entirely new product using a very, very new technology of messenger RNA to come up with and design a vaccine that has proven to be effective against the coronavirus that has inflicted so much pain and suffering on people all over the world. So very contemporary examples of the power of innovation and both effectiveness, doing something that no other medication could do, and also speed, getting to the market fast, which was so important in this application. And then for clothing, and especially women's apparel, they don't go to Walmart for the highest fashion and the highest styles and fabric. You go to the Italian brands, Armani and Ferragamo. I often say my wife does not shop at a store unless it has a vowel at the end of its name, as these two. So these are the kinds of organizations we're talking about here, where innovation is central to its success and its strategy. And if I were to, let's say, create a whole strategy map just on innovation, what would it look like? What would a strategy map just on innovation look like? So this looks a lot like the slide I showed you 2 slides ago, this one. But this strategy map was general purpose. It could be adapted for any strategy. This strategy map says, okay, everything we do on this map is geared to innovation. So even productivity, what does it mean to be efficient? Well, it means in your product development stage, when you're developing that new product, selecting the product, designing and developing and then launching it. We still want to be mindful of efficiencies and cost to keep the cost of development to what it needs to be in order to launch that product on time. But the measures for revenue growth are how much revenues are we getting from new products, products launched in the last 18 to 24 months, and what margins are we earning? So one of the characteristics of a company like Apple is that when it introduces a new product, it's innovative when the margins it earns on that new product are higher than the margins on its previous product. If you're just doing line extensions, simple improvements, going from the iPhone 6 to an iPhone 7, and it's not really innovative, the margins look about the same. It's only when it has new features and functionality that people are willing to pay more for that they're able to earn the higher margins. And that's why the higher companies like BMW or Mercedes earn higher margins per car than cars like Toyota or Nissan. Now, what do we offer our customers? What causes them to buy from us is, first you want to be first to market, as Apple often is. And clearly in the COVID crisis, we very much appreciate Moderna and Pfizer getting to the market so quickly. But it also has to have high performance. It has to be smaller, faster, fly higher, dive deeper for the Navy submarines, use less battery power, more accurate. So there's some feature or features that enable this product or service to stand out from the crowd and offer the customers something dramatically differently and better than the previous and existing products. And sometimes that opens you up to new customer segments, customers that were not interested in buying the previous version of the product, but with its enhanced functionality and features, we can now market and sell to new customers. So these are objectives in the customer perspective that are associated with innovation. Well, how do we deliver on the innovation? What are the critical process? Well, we can think about when the production, if we're an innovative company, our production processes have to be customized to the innovation, which means I can't have rigid, highly efficient assembly lines that I can't switch over quickly as I introduce new products. Actually, the most important aspect of a production line for innovation is the ability to introduce new products as they become available. So they have to be much more flexible and robust and not targeted at only one high volume standard product. And we want to have capacity for rapid growth. So we want to build capacity that enables us to grow and expand quickly if the product is successful. And then we're getting feedback from customers. The engineers are tweaking the new product, And so we have to have the ability in our production processes to handle new features and new aspects. So again, this is the opposite of a Toyota production system, which is dedicated to high volume, narrow variety. We need to have a production system that has relatively short production volumes and able to handle high variety, to handle the innovation and the customization. In our relationships with customers, we often have to explain to customers how to use these new products and services. This may be a new process for us. And look at it the other way. Are we capturing ideas and learning from our customers about new features and functionality that they would like to see? So one of the customer management processes for innovation is to learn from your customers and even co-create with your customers the new products and services. And then, of course, the key processes is high-performance product development, shorten the time from idea to market, product development time. So these are the core innovation processes of identifying and launching new products, getting them to the marketplace quickly. The societal aspects is think about product take-back. If you're doing a lot of new products and people throw away the old product, well, that's not good. So we have to think about the reclamation and recovery or recycling of the previous generation of products in this. Now, what does it do for our people? Learning and growth. Well, we need to have people with deep scientific and technical skills. Like a lot of the innovation comes from, the new sciences. People who were developing drugs in the 1990s would not have developed the drugs that Moderna and Pfizer developed in the last 12 months. These were people trained in molecular biology, very different. So we need deep functional and technical expertise in the underlying science of our innovation. But all innovation today is done in teams. So our people not only have to have deep skills in science and technology, they have to know work and play well with others, work effectively in multidisciplinary teams, which is not always a natural act for engineers to be good at. You don't get trained at that at engineering school. But this is really important, the teamwork and multidisciplinary work. What kind of technology do we need? Well, we need technology to simulate what this product will look like. So that's product prototyping, dynamic simulation, which the automobile companies are now doing. And it's not about enterprise software. It's about computer-aided design, computer-aided software, computer-aided manufacturing. So technology tools that aid us in the product development process. And then the culture I talked about before, it's Steve Jobs. How do you think out of the box? How do you think about products that our customers haven't even dreamed about? Out of the box, creative thinking, not continuous improvement. So in some sense, this is really the whole story. This is what a whole strategy map for innovation looks like. Now, some of this I just put in some slides to talk about. If we have the objectives are what are on the strategy map, and then we can have some measures. And I'll make the slides available to you so you can go back. And these are just a menu of the way we could think about how do we indicate whether we're successful on the objective. So innovation effectiveness. I talked about gross margins and percent of sales from products newly introduced. Innovation efficiency, how much are we spending on R&D as a percentage of sales? And are we spending correctly over the product development cycle? We're doing some basic research, some applied research, then process improvement as we do product development. So these are various types of financial measures. In terms of customer measures, some of this depends whether the innovation is inside a business unit or is the whole company. So if you're an innovation group within the larger company, the success is whether you make your business unit successful with the innovation. So you're a central part of their success. Are you delivering those innovations on time and on budget? And helping the business units see new products that they can launch with the technologies that you're developing. So this first row is about for an internal innovation or product development group or research and development group. Second one is really the company itself being innovative to be a partner with your external customers and get feedback from your customers. How do they think about your innovation? How do they rank you relative to other suppliers on technology and innovation? Have you co-created products with your customer where you went from their ideas and their thoughts and developed the product to meet their specific needs? And then how do you, if people are doing external surveys, how do your products compare to those of competitors in the same sector? We talked about the other customer objective of being first to the market with these exciting new products. And again, we can use customer ratings, customer of our performance, of our innovation, the gross margins, and how many times were we indeed first to market. So all examples of customer metrics with an innovation strategy. When we think about the processes, so now we're down in this sector again, there are multiple processes in the innovation cycle. One is anticipating the customer needs, discovering new opportunities, choosing the mix of products and selecting which ones you're working on, then the design and development process, and then the product launch. And so if we think about the measures, again, we want to reduce time to market of new ideas, increase yield. This is really project success. How many projects successfully go through from beginning to end, and we end up not abandoning projects because we couldn't deliver the performance we hoped for. Once we launch, how quickly can we get this up to manufacturing speed, and did we stay within the budget? Here's the idea of partnering with our customers. We have relationship managers, service agreements on delivering it, and the co-creation. And if you're an internal innovation group, a research and development group, how do you help the business group succeed in differentiation through the innovation strategy? And then it's up to you to deliver the technology that gives their products and services that superior functionality. So again, looking at the measures for operational excellence, how long does it take from idea to market? The yield, what's the fall off in projects from stage to stage? Our cost. Actually, did we hit our cost targets for manufacturing? So when we start a new product into production, we'll have certain performance goals, cost goals for what the new product could cost. With the actual launch, how closely did the actual manufacturing come to the targeted cost we had in the product design? And then some of the safety, environmental issues, and potentially defects. How many products had to get returned, a warranty, field service requirement. So these are all kind of what it means to be good in the innovation process. The customer relationship process, how many ideas have been developed from customers and with customers. And that's part of learning from our customers, anticipating and meeting their future needs. And, what's the pipeline look like? How many new ideas are entering product development? What's the potential performance, financial performance of products in our pipeline? Patents are often an indicator, not a perfect indicator, but they're sometimes an indicator of the innovativeness of our new idea. So again, these are the metrics we could think about choosing from. This is just in a way a repeat of that number of fundamental new ideas coming in. How long did it take? What's the manufacturing cost? And that's duplication. So there's one metric actually you may not have seen. This is actually my favorite innovation metric. And I learned this from Hewlett-Packard 30 years ago. And Hewlett-Packard at that time was almost the prototype of a great innovative company. And they wanted to think of a metric that brought together innovation and product development success. And so they have this metric they called for break-even time for new products. And so what it does is just tracks the project, how much we've spent on the project. So initially in the product development for a new product, we're spending on product development and process development. So this is the research and development cycle. And so that takes some time. This could take 1 year, it could take 3 years. But finally, we have completed the design of the product, and we now launch the product. Okay, and we're in a deficit position because we've been spending for all this time in product design and development. But now the cash starts to come in rather than leave. So the cumulative cash flow starts to head up. And the question is, how fast does it ramp up? Now, if you have very high margins, revenue, the price less your manufacturing cost, you have a very steep curve here. If you have low margins, it's kind of a shallow curve, because you're only earning a certain amount of money per product that you sold. And the question is, how long does it take you to get your investment back? Okay, that's the break-even time. And some the products never make it. The product is too late, it's stale, doesn't generate enough sales, the margins are too low, and it never recovers its initial cost. And so there are a lot of variables here, because if you could launch the product earlier, then you may have higher margins because it's more innovative and you've spent less. So you're starting from here and you can get to break even faster. And so it has a nice trade-off between product development time, product development cost, price, revenues of new products, and the manufacturing cost and the selling and distribution costs associated with it. And so at the beginning of every project, the HP team, it's the engineers, the manufacturing people, the finance people, the marketing people, they got together and they try to estimate what this curve looked like. And that was part of the product development decision, how much we should spend on it, how much innovation we should spend, which would lengthen the product development time. What is the customer willing to pay for? How easy will it be to manufacture? All these discussions are taking place at time zero, not here after we've tried to launch it. And then you could track the performance. So I kind of like that. It kind of brings together all aspects of the innovation. And then finally, learning and growth, getting near the end here. I talked about the competencies. Do we have the right mix of people from the basic sciences and the engineering, and then people from marketing and who understand the customer and what they want and what they're willing to pay for. Then we may want to have knowledge management. How are we doing managing the whole R&D organization? Are we sharing ideas, sharing best practices? Do we have the right tools? And then this idea of the culture and the climate. Do we really have an innovation culture here? And are people, do they feel encouraged to be innovative and help to design new products? And in fact, some people, after Dave Norton and I introduced the balanced scorecard 30 years ago, they said rather than call this fourth perspective learning and growth, they called it talent and technology, which sounds nice in English. They both start with the same letter. And I said, darn, I wish we had thought of that. Because that's really what we want. But we want talent and technology, but also this idea of innovation. Didn't have a third T word here. So that's really the overall thoughts on how we have used strategy maps and scorecards for an innovation strategy or for a research and development group within a larger organization. Just to close, here's a balanced scorecard for a specialty chemicals company. It moved from a commodity to a specialty chemicals company. And so they have a lot of objectives and measures, but I tried to highlight in red the ones that captured the innovation from their specialty chemical business, to be able to see, where they are earning revenues in their different divisions, percentage of revenues from products in the last 3 years, index of product profitability of those products, a set of metrics about the new product development process, the financial net present value of products in the pipeline. Because a lot of chemical companies, they would spend tens and tens of millions of dollars for new molecules whose worldwide sales would be less than $3 million a year. So well, that was a bad choice of the product development process, is to spend tens of millions of dollars for a molecule whose application, even if successful, would be measured in millions of dollars and not tens of millions of dollars. How many of the products leveraged our expertise? Did we complete them on time and on budget? And do we have the right mix of employees with the right skills? So that, I think, 30-minute highlight of innovation. And now let me leave it open here for discussion. I'll stop the screen sharing. And
Thank you, Professor, for your presentation. Yeah, actually, I feel like a challenge. You challenge us to how to set our minds in these 4 levels, from strategy and putting always the client in the center. And that's very hard for us, because what all the companies you mentioned during your presentation have in common is that they are looking for more revenue and how to get their money back. And that's maybe one of the main difference we have with the companies. We are a navy, so we are part of the state. And the first question is related with that. How do you, on the upper part of the strategy map, you place the financial aspect, which is okay for businesses. But what would you be, in your opinion, the higher level of a strategy map for public organizations, and in particular for military organizations?
Sure. So let me talk about that. I didn't have anything, really quickly at hand to do, but let me say that innovation is extremely important in the military. And let me give the counterexample. 60 years ago, actually a little over, in 1960, John Kennedy was elected president, and his Secretary of Defense, he hired Robert McNamara, who had been the president of the Ford Motor Company and actually a graduate of the Harvard Business School, was even a faculty member at the Harvard Business School. And McNamara came to the Department of Defense of the United States, and he looked at this and he said, this is really inefficient here. This doesn't look anything like the production lines I managed and led at Ford Motor Company. And actually, McNamara set in some of the processes were good. He put in a formal budgeting process. They didn't have really a good budgeting process, so he put in a budgeting process. But what he thought is, we have too many different kinds of aircraft. The Air Force has its aircraft, and the Navy has its aircraft to land on carriers, and the Army has its aircraft for close air support of ground operations. The Coast Guard has its aircraft looking for people if they get lost offshore. And he said, every time we do this, the production runs are too short. We have 4 different types of aircraft, actually many more, because the Air Force had lots of different kinds of aircraft, and the Navy had different types. And he says, we have to come up with a standard aircraft that we can use across all the services. The military people, be more efficient. The military people were objecting, but they really couldn't argue with a former Harvard Business School faculty member and chief executive. And so they tried to do this, and it was a huge failure. Because actually, the goal of the military is not to be efficient. The goal of the military is to be effective. You have to win wars and win battles. And if you have only one type of aircraft, your enemy will quickly learn what to do to shoot it down and win all the air battles up there. And the only way you fight that is if you have 10 different kinds of aircraft, then they don't know which one to target, because each one has different performance features, in terms of maneuverability or speed or altitude or firepower. And so it was the exact opposite of what a military needed. They actually did need variety, because ultimately the goal is effectiveness. So, and again, that's a long example. But a lot of people think balanced scorecard is just about efficiency, and it shouldn't be. Efficiency is important, but it's not the whole story. So I think in the military, it's a question of being able to win battles. And the innovation has to be as you think who your enemy is, and as their capabilities develop, you have to have in your product development pipeline, the weapons, whether it's artillery or aircraft or helicopters or drones or satellite imagery, that's able to counteract what your enemy can do to you. And that's your equivalent of financial performance. And if you can't do that, saying as you watch all your planes go shot down and say, well, at least we built them cheaply, is not very rewarding to the citizens you're trying to protect. And if you have only one type of ship, and now the enemy knows how to attack that ship, and you can produce the ships cheaply, but that's not the point. The ship's there to defend you and to protect shipping, not to achieve Toyota levels of efficiency. So ultimately, it's not revenues, but it is effectiveness. And the effectiveness is probably to achieve military missions. You have to achieve the mission that you are being given to accomplish in the face of an enemy, not a competitor, but an enemy who's trying to prevent you from delivering on that mission. And that's what goes up in that top layer of a balanced scorecard or strategy map. Is that okay? Does that sound?
Yeah, it actually is awesome. Perfect. And I would like to take that the end of your answer. You said that military organizations, we have to pursue the accomplishment of our mission. In any scenario, in case of conflict or even in peace, we have a role to play. And you said a lot of things about diversity of products.
So you need a very robust response because you're not sure what's going to hit you. And so you have to have that flexibility and robustness to handle a wide variety of situations. And, in some sense, that's why the military leads in wargaming and scenario analysis. So you can think about the different states of the world that could arise where you may have to play a role.
Okay, and I would like to connect in products, because during your presentation you also gave us a very good example of what innovation is when we are talking about products. And you said when you have the iPhone 6 and you want to move out to the iPhone 7, it's because you can do more things. When in the military world, if we have a ship or a missile or an aircraft and we want to go to the next stage, and I'm referring to the break-even time and the time to market, let's assume that a project is complete and a new project is ready to be launched. How do you determine when to launch the product that kills the previous version?
So the answer is, if you don't do it, your enemy will. So you're not likely to have a monopoly on the technology or the new ideas. And that's something companies fail to realize. Kodak failed to realize it in digital photography. And Sears failed to realize that in discount stores. And Nokia failed to realize it with Apple and the smartphone. All of those companies had that technology available to them, but they didn't want to launch it because it was going to cannibalize or make obsolete their previous product. But eventually, they didn't get to do the obsolescence their competitor did. And especially in the military situation, I think we have to be ever cognizant that, especially now with artificial intelligence and drones, that we have to really think about the viability of things, like an aircraft carrier. Is this, how does that survive? What's its survivability in an environment of global satellite imaging and small, inexpensive drones, but potentially with high firepower? So, and that's why the wargaming is so important, to put some of your people in the minds of the enemy and say, if you were the enemy, what would you do to destroy us? And that can be very painful. The only thing more painful is not doing it and having it actually happen to you.
For sure,
Now,
will be very
having said
painful.
that, I mean, where the U.S. fails is our procurement and development process has become so bureaucratized that our product is very slow and very expensive, and we don't have streamlined things. But let me go back again 60 or 70 years in the U.S. military in the 1950s, and they decided that submarines were terrific and they helped us win the war, particularly against Japan. They played a critical role, but I think they decided that diesel-powered submarines were not going to be as powerful. Imagine if we could have a nuclear-powered submarine, that we could keep under the water for 6 months without having to come to the surface. And they thought, wow, let's have let's do that. But if they had taken the nuclear-powered submarine through the normal procurement process, very innovative product, it would have taken a decade and a half for this to finish. What the Navy did is they took an admiral, very innovative admiral, Admiral Rickover, and they says, you're head of the nuclear submarine project, and you can take this and do this outside the normal naval purchasing capabilities. And Rickover said, I need a bunch of money, because what he actually did is launch 2 different designs for the nuclear submarine. Not one, he did 2. And started through the product development process, because he didn't know which one would be better. And they wouldn't know until they developed the reactor and the 2 different technologies for the reactor. And he said, we can't wait to run the trial and then start building the submarines. We have to start this, and we'll run it on 2 parallel paths, and then at some point we'll make a decision which one's the best. We would have wasted the money we did on the other technology, but this enabled him to get that new nuclear submarine out, I think it was called, faster than anyone had ever expected. And it was such a priority that they actually took it outside the normal procurement process, gave him additional funds, so it was not efficient, but he was able to postpone the ultimate choice about which technology to use in that reactor. So I think that's a good first of all, it's a real story, but it's something we need to remember. The goal is not to be, again, overly efficient, but to come out with the best solution, which in fact we did, and we've had dominance in nuclear submarines since the 1950s and the innovations that Admiral Rickover gave for us.
Thank you for your answer, Professor. And for sure, we have to be focused on the mission. But if you agree with me, we can't do this alone. We need an ecosystem. And as you said, this admiral needed to go off-grid, to say some way, to accomplish with that project of the nuclear submarine. And according to this ecosystem, how do you see an ecosystem strategy map? How would you think about about the policy-making public organization could foster advancement in that sense? In other words, what would be the strategy map to bring up a healthier innovation ecosystem for military organizations?
I'm smiling because that is such a great question. In fact, it's not in the military application that you just asked me, but what I'm doing now with our consulting company, Palladium, is we're working on ecosystem strategy maps for corporations that want to earn money, but also improve the environment and improve the socio-economic conditions of people in poor neighborhoods. And the company can't do this alone. They have to collaborate with local people, local suppliers and distributors, and so we're actually in the process of creating linked strategy maps among multiple players. So now, to give you potentially a short answer, is you might actually create a strategy map for the whole ecosystem. Don't do it for the organization. What would an innovation ecosystem look like? Which would include the military, but it would include the policymakers of the government, and it would include your supply base. Of which has to be part of that, and see if you can create that. And so instead of the customer layer, call that stakeholders. And the stakeholders are the military, it's the government representing the citizens, and suppliers. And each of those has objectives. And then you think about the collaborative processes. And if you can do this ecosystem strategy map, then each of the units can then do its strategy map. What is the governmental strategy map for its role in the ecosystem? What's the Navy's role? What's the supplier's role? And so then you get these linkages that are informed by the high-level ecosystem strategy map, but then you get to the organizations. So I mean, it's somewhat generic and vague, but in fact, what we find is we're increasingly doing strategy maps that cross organizational lines. Even if you don't have an ecosystem, if you just have a key supplier you want to work better with, you can have a strategy map for the supplier relationship, where you're the purchaser and they are the supplier. Or if you're supplying things to the Department of Defense, in fact, they're the customer and you're the supplier, what should that collaborative relationship look like? So you could start out with these, they call it a binary approach of the entity to either a key customer, in your case, maybe the government or Ministry of Defense, or you and a key supplier, whether it's a shipbuilder or a weapons producer or a systems integrator, and how to let the strategy map represent how you work better together. So you understand what they want, they understand what you want, and then you've agreed what you can achieve by working very closely together rather than at arm's length contracts.
And Professor, how would you relate the usage of innovation strategy maps to the one of technology roadmaps and technology readiness level management?
Okay, well, it's hard for me to kind of talk about how our tool, relates to some other set of tools that I'm less familiar with, but you are more familiar with. So I almost have to let you see, but probably the technology roadmaps would be derived from the strategy map. That strategy map will give you the whole picture of what we try to accomplish, and then maybe the technology roadmaps are the implementation tool and more of an operational tool to bring that about.
Professor, thank you. I have another question, sorry. How do you realize that your research can improve and be helpful to both private sector and government?
Well, this occurred within 5 years of our launch of the Balanced Scorecard, because it looked like the strategy maps I showed you, and the government came, and nonprofits also, not just the government, nonprofits said, this looks like this could be helpful for us, but we don't have revenue goals or shareholder goals. What does it mean to us? And so we started out, we did some projects. We did a project with a city in North Carolina who had a very innovative city government and city manager. And we went out and did some projects with nonprofits to see how this would work. See, in fact, the public sector and the nonprofits need the Balanced Scorecard even more than the private sector, because the only typical management system that any organization has is the budget system. So, even though you're a public sector organization, the military has a budget, the Navy has a budget, your unit has a budget. And so we are running public sector organizations and nonprofits with a management tool, the budget, that's purely financial. Now, in the private sector, if you deliver on your financial goals, you're a success, you win. But as we talked about, the Navy could come in right on its budget, but lose every air fight or every naval battle. And they'll say, well, what happened? He says, well, we're on our budget. No, but you didn't deliver on the mission, to protect the citizens and protect our shipping. And so the success of a public sector or a nonprofit organization can't be measured financially. And it's exactly right. But yet often the only management tool they have to manage their stuff is a financial tool. So they really need something that can highlight non-financial. And so that's the motivation for the answer I'm about to give, which is when we're dealing with public sector and nonprofits, we actually move the customer or the citizen to the top of the strategy map. And says your ultimately objective is to protect the citizen, make the citizen better off in some way. And that's and have measures associated with that. The financial is still relevant. You have to try to be as efficient as you can and stay within your budget. But that's more a driver of success, an enabler of success, rather than the measure of success. And so what we learned within 5 years as we worked with public sector and nonprofit organizations is to move the citizen or the constituent to the top of the strategy map and the balanced scorecard and develop measures related to how your mission makes that citizen better off. And that's your ultimate accountability to your taxpayers or to your constituents and donors, financial supporters.
Professor, this strategy map put us in four levels, main levels. And for sure, the abilities of every person not necessarily fits on every level. So my question is, how important do you think it is the human factor, the leadership skills and styles in the development and application of a strategy map?
No. I mean, the leadership is huge. In fact, the failures we've had is not because the balanced scorecard was badly designed or doesn't work. It's because it was the lack of leadership in the organization that was trying to implement the balanced scorecard. And usually it's because the scorecard was brought into the organization as a financial tool or a compensation tool or a budgeting tool, and not as a strategy execution tool. And that's its real power. And only the CEO or the leader really has the visibility and accountability for strategy. So leadership is terribly important. That's a whole other talk that we have to have on the execution of the strategy and the role of leadership. We do have a book on that called The Execution Premium, which talks about embedding the strategy map and balanced scorecard in a strategy execution process where leadership has to play a critical role. But it's not just the leader. Where I thought you were going to take me is, what about the sailor on a ship or the production worker? And what we have to do is they should see the strategy map for the organization. But we should be able to cascade down metrics that are relevant for people on the front lines or the back offices or the support departments, and measures that these people need to perform on or we want them to achieve. But the measures have to link to something on the balanced scorecard, that if you do these things in your day-to-day operations, it will contribute to one or more of the measures on the balanced scorecard. So another part of the strategy execution system is to drive the high-level metrics that are on your balanced scorecard down to operational metrics and personal performance metrics that are meaningful to every single employee in your organization, and that they can have feedback from and learn from and try to improve in their day-to-day operations. So if you think about an airline company, a high-level metric would be percentage of flights that left on time, okay? And that's important. But there's so many steps, someone who's cleaning the plane or helping people check in or handling the luggage or refueling the plane. So, you have dozens of people, of employees who are involved that contribute to fast ground turnaround time. Well, certainly on your aircraft, if you have aircraft carriers, the whole ground crew that has to work once the plane lands before it's ready to take off. So they have very specific measures that they have to perform on, meaningful to them, but contribute to getting that plane capable of getting back up in the air quickly, which is the high-level strategy metric that you want to get higher utilization out of your most important resources.
Professor, thank you very much for your time, for sharing all your experience or your knowledge with us. We were very happy to share this afternoon with you. And if you let me now, I'm going to speak a little bit in Spanish to say thank you to all the people who was with us this afternoon. Thank you very much, Professor. Bueno, muchas gracias a todos por habernos acompañado esta tarde. Les recuerdo que este video quedará disponible en nuestra página web y esperamos que hayan disfrutado de esta presentación y los dejamos cordialmente invitados para seguirnos en nuestras redes sociales. Recuerden entrar en nuestra web e inscribirse para el próximo martes, donde escucharemos las presentaciones de los 9 equipos finalistas del Desafío Avante y veremos quiénes serán los ganadores del primer premio de $50.000 y del segundo lugar. Los esperamos para el cierre de Innova Polinab 2020 y para invitarlos a nuestra próxima edición de Innova Polinab 2021 y el próximo desafío que se viene para adelante este año. Así que muchas gracias por compartir con nosotros esta tarde y que tengan una muy buena tarde.